my understanding of 9/11 as a 5th grader was basically that, I was sitting in class and kids were getting pulled out of class and I didn't really understand why. And then I came home, my mom was crying so much when I got off the bus that I thought, a grandparent had passed away. I didn't realize the impact of anything else. I was just so focused on myself. My mom explained everything that was going on, and then that afternoon, my older brother, my dad, and I walked up to the top of our hill, and the whole skyline was completely black, whereas you could normally see the New York skyline. It was just darkness. I was traveling in Italy, and I asked a man to take a picture of me next to a famous monument. And he heard my accent and he said, "Oh, you're from America, where?" And I said, "New Jersey, very close to New York City, 30 minutes away." And he said, "Oh wow, 9/11, what was that like for you?" And I said, I was young, I didn't really understand it. And then he told me a story, and this is where I think 9/11 really changed for me. He said that sitting in a cafe at lunchtime, he saw the news and he said he immediately broke down crying. And I said, "You're not American, you're from France. Why would you be crying like that?" And he said, "You don't understand. The world changed that day." And I cried because the world changed. Because I knew that if somebody could do this to America, then the rest of the world wasn't safe.
Then at 10 o'clock, when the Pentagon got hit, my sister's entire townhouse shook. So it was like being right next to an explosion. I remember diving on the ground. I was like, "Dad, at this point, no one knew what was going on. Everyone kind of was shocked by the situation. It was very surreal." So I was like, "We have to get out of here." I was like, "Let's get in the car, just get out of the city." I was like, something's going on. So my dad was like looking to me like, "Where do you want to go?" He was looking to me for answers, and I was like, I don't know. We just need to get out of here." So we kind of went out to the front porch, and we were like, looking at I could see the smoke coming up over the trees. It was like right there, and that's really the best way I can sum up the perspective.
We watched it all unfold in real time. And then once it became apparent that we were under attack, the school kind of erupted. We had many students whose parents worked on Wall Street, who worked in the buildings. They were leaving classes. Parents were coming to the school in tears to pick up their children, not knowing what happened to their loved ones. They were not able to make communication with them. So it was terrifying. And at the end of that day, Mr. Wargacki, our principal, called the entire faculty into the auditorium and said, "We don't know what tomorrow is going to bring." And that's how we left, in silence, stunned silence, as the faculty left the building to go home and try to figure out what had happened that day. And that's how I'll always remember it.
One of the reasons I'm so passionate about teaching 9/11 was that in 2001, September 2001, I was a student at the University of Nebraska, and I felt really, really cut off from everything that was going on. The people of the heartland were everything you'd want them to be. They're upset, they were distraught, they were confused, they were angry. They're everything that you'd want an American to be, but they really didn't understand the significance of the region and how many people worked there and what those buildings meant and stood for. For months, I just called my parents, phone call after phone call, for updates that they really weren't able to give. And I think that idea of being so cut off from feeling connected to the people here really led to me, like, as soon as I got into the classroom, I knew I had to find a way to teach 9/11. Yeah, it was interesting. As I was reading the Red Bandanna, Tom Rinaldi's The Red Bandanna, I just started to think, and I kept thinking, like, Nyack is not that far from where we were at. And I just wanted her to know that their son's story was still having an impact on young people. The email itself, though, I probably sat on for like a month. was sitting in my film class right after I saw an email. It was Allison Crowther. I said, oh my God, she emailed us back. I couldn't believe it. And I think in the very first email she said, perhaps sometime I could visit your school. And I was blown away. And then there was a Saturday, and we were on the way back from Stamford, Connecticut. And I said to my wife, I wonder how far off the highway Empire Hook and Ladder is. I'd like to get a picture of the plaque that's there for Wells. And I plug it into MapQuest or Google Maps, and she's like, it's a mile. So we stopped. When we got there, the rigs were out in the street, and my wife was like, do you still want to go? It looks like there's something going on here. I was like, yeah, we're here. I'm going to go in and see what's going on. And I walk into the building, and I asked for the one name that I had, James Weck. And they're like, if he's still here, I think he's out back on the grill. So I started walking through the firehouse, and I get to a point where I see this gentleman sitting on the end of the couch. He's got a Boston College t-shirt on. It's got the red bandana in the middle. And in the moment, I was so excited, I said something pretty stupid. I said, hello, what is your name? And he said, Jefferson Crowther. I said, oh my gosh, I've been corresponding with your wife for months. And he goes, she's right behind you. So I turned around, and sure enough, there's Allison in a red suit. And I said, Allison, I'm Nate Ward from Mendham. We've been corresponding for months. I said, this is such a coincidence. And she looked at me and she said, no, this is Wells. This is the way he works. And the hair on my arms raised up. You know, it was really nice after all the correspondence back and forth to be able to put a face with the letter, and to know that that this was something that was going to be a pretty special relationship. In a conversation with Allison last year, when I met her unexpectedly in person for the first time, she said to me, this is the way Wells works. Today, we get to experience that firsthand, the way Wells works. And now, please give the warmest welcome you've ever given, and I mean it. I really want to make her know how much we value her being here. Let Wells know. This is Allison Crowther.
He said, you know, Mom, what I love about being on a team, and this was particularly, it came up because of Nyack High School, he said it makes all of our differences fade away, and they all drop away, and we become like one big family working toward a common goal. In what ways does grief lessen with time? You find a place to put it, ultimately. It doesn't lessen. Every now and then there's some question that's asked of me that opens the floodgates and out it comes, but you just learn ways of dealing with it and ways of controlling it. My husband says it's like an old sports injury. You know, you just learn to walk a certain way or talk a certain way, and it helps. You don't know what you're capable of until you're pushed to the extreme. And I thought that really reflects much more what I've been through. It also, in the early days, forced me to turn outward, which so many people, when a tragedy happens, they just kind of turn inward and, oh dear, and just dwell on the horribleness of it, and oh, poor me and poor us, and that's a death spiral. So I was actually asked the question in an interview recently, what would I recommend to other people who've had a tragedy in their life? So what I say is turn outward.
Well, Wells started wearing a red bandana from a very early age. His father was getting him dressed for church one morning. He was about 6, I think, and my husband always had a white kerchief in his breast pocket, and my husband always carried a bandana in his back pocket for messy jobs. So Wells said to him, "Daddy, can I have a handkerchief like you do?" And he was in a little suit. My husband said, sure, Wells. So he went in and he got a white handkerchief, but then he said, I don't know why, I just happened to grab a red bandana for him too. So he folded up the white bandana and he put it in Wells's pocket and he said, now Wells, this bandana is for show. Don't touch it, leave it right there. Here's a bandana that's for to blow your nose, for messy jobs. And so from then on, Wells carried it, and it was like a bond with his father, I think.
Wells' story, it's a very powerful story. I was glad to be here today and meet his mother. It just shows that he would have fit right in on New York City Fire Department. He had all the qualities and attributes that New York City fireman has. I was glad to learn that he was made an honorary New York City fireman. Wells is what it's all about. He shows, what we do. We want to help people at all times, and he, gave his life helping people, and that's because that was just something that was in his DNA. It's from hearing what his mother said, he's an extraordinary person, and Wells is just that type of person that went and helped a dozen people live on that terrible day. So, Wells would be someone that I would have loved to meet, love to be like, and everyone else should strive to be like.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
But thank you again for helping out and sharing your remarkable story.
You're welcome.
Touched on it last time, just excitement. Excitement and to deliver a message, that the Red Bandana and the story behind the Red Bandana is real. And there's life events that every student and every faculty member and every, person in the community can probably relate to, of having to display some type of courage, in their lives. And I think that's very important for teen people to understand. And if it takes a book, if it takes a red bandana to people to realize that, you have to have a sense of resiliency in life to get through, that's what it's all about. And if that's what students got out of it, I'd say it was a very successful message and a successful day for the entire school. And in particular, myself, I really was happy the way it ended up. As I look back on it, obviously I would have loved to get a win on that game to make it all good and grand, but sometimes there's a bigger picture that's more important.
I felt like it was going to be any other game. My coach talked a lot about it, and I didn't really know how much unity and how much spirit would really come out of the crowd, and how many people from our school community would come together and from our actual community to create such an amazing experience that I'm never going to forget. It's interesting that a lot of people are separate, groups are separate, and they never really come together except for in this situation. Every time a player took off their helmet and they had a red bandana underneath their helmet, you thought of Wells Crowther, and you thought of what an amazing person he was and what he did to save so many people. Well, it's changed our student body a lot, I feel, because when 9/11 happened, we were all young, especially seniors. We were 1, maybe 2 years old at the time, at most, and we don't really remember everything that happened. But through this experience, we really got to see what it was like at the time. We got to see the sadness, the pain, and the way that America came back afterwards and really came together as one to be happy again and be whole.
Well, I'd say probably the emotional part was the biggest thing. Just for me, it was really special to play in something that really meant more than just myself or just a game. I was really playing for Wells and those people who also died in 9/11. So it was great to be able to have that and to really recognize the deeper meaning and what the red bandana meant and recognize it's more than just a football game.
It really has created a sense of unity in the student body, because no matter what happens, especially in such a horrible situation where so many people passed away, we know that we can come back, and that's really shown throughout the student body as well. Especially in the game, we all just came together.
So I think it had a profound impact on the community, and I think it was really something great just for the culture of Mendham.
We went out to dinner after a concert for Remembrance, and I opened up a cookie that my husband gave me, and in it said, "If anything is done with love, it will be a masterpiece." So I thought that was a wonderful message also to share with you all. So, get out there and create your masterpieces.